Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome back to the Great Movie Ride podcast. I am, of course, joined by my co-host, Jerryofdom,
Hello.
and this time we will be examining the 2018 film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because this isn't a movie review podcast at all, it's a Spider-Man review podcast.
Only done now three.
Yeah, 3 out of 8. That's almost half of our stuff has been Spider-Man. Don't worry,
And
there
now
will
we need to
be.
review the shows. That's what we need to do. Each episode.
Don't worry, there will be a slight gap in Spider-Man content after this one.
I don't know. I'll request Spider-Man 3 to be reviewed.
Yeah, but we still got some in between before the new
Hey!
requests go through. Um, yeah. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Um, why don't you go ahead and start off with the previewing thoughts?
That was a while ago, but I remember looking at this movie and I was like, well, it's Spider-Man. I really liked Spider-Man. And I was like, well, let's see how it goes. It's a different style that hasn't really been done before, and it's got different ideas in it. And I was like, this will be interesting. I'll go see it. I wasn't like particularly excited, but I was like, I'll see it.
I uh I'm gonna see how many fanboys I can make mad in an hour and a half here, however long this takes. Um, I had absolutely no interest in this movie at all when it got announced. I didn't plan on seeing it, and as I'm sure you are aware, and in case you're not, I have nothing against animated films, and I obviously have nothing against Spider-Man. It just didn't catch my interest at all. I was just like, okay, whatever. And then eventually it came onto Netflix and I saw it. And of course, the hype for this film was through the roof since it came out. And I watched it on Netflix and I thought it was a fine movie, but I thought it was very overrated. Um, Not at all worth the hype, in my opinion. And then
Big
I
fan of
ended up
Fire.
then I ended up watching it a second time, and my opinion didn't change,
Hmm.
or at least not drastically. And then I went to watch it this time for the review because it had been a while since I've seen it. So let's dive into the light spoilers, our plot sum up. This film follows Miles Morales as he becomes the new Spider Man and joins other Spider people from various parallel universes to save his universe from the Kingpin. Miles struggles to come to terms with his powers, his family, and his responsibilities. Meanwhile, the other spider people learn that they have a limited time left before they are gone forever.
Who wouldn't want to go away forever?
Oof. um, so that's our plot sum up. That's I. It's hard to do the plot sum up for a movie that was so old.
Yeah.
And old, 2018, not terribly old, but uh,
It's almost 5 years.
true. It's actually almost 4, but it was end of
Oh,
2022. But
you know what?
um, the point being that when we do the plot sum up, what we intend is just what the trailers show. But for older movies, that's a lot harder to do. Um, but I think that's pretty close to what was known in the trailers. I don't think there's too much groundbreaking there, except maybe Kingpin's involved. I don't necessarily remember him in the
I'm
trailers,
now
but
looking at the trailer just to get a reminder.
well, it's too late now. We're live.
Well, that's fine. As we continue and go with it.
Okay, so let's talk about the characters. Of course, starting with Miles Morales, who is voiced by Shamik Moore. He is an intelligent and rebellious teenager of African American and Puerto Rican descent who is imbued with spider-like abilities after being bitten by a mutated spider, and eventually takes up the mantle of the mass vigilante Spider-Man. Producers Christopher Lord and Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. That's the ones. Described the character as unique among Spider-Men because of his Brooklyn upbringing, his Puerto Rican and African American background, and the fact that his family is still alive, with that family dynamic being central to the film's story. There is quite a lot of background information I could easily find, so we're going to have an interesting perspective on the behind the scenes of a few of these characters, which is always exciting. Would you like to start it off with your thoughts on Miles Morales?
Miles Morales, he's a very interesting character in this film where you see his progression of growth into becoming the new Spider-Man of his universe as things happen. And it's realistic on how he handles it. He's confused, he's scared, he's worried. There's these emotions that are going through where he doesn't know how to deal with half these things. He just wants to do what's best and is trying to help out. And because he still has that learning curve throughout the entire movie, you see the struggle that is going on.
Yeah. Um, so I want to start off my thoughts by just saying that people have been sleeping on Miles for years. Long before this movie came out, Miles Morales has existed in the comics for a lot longer than 2018. And the people just did not care about him because he wasn't part of any movies or anything. People have been sleeping on Miles for years. Now, I'll admit, I didn't know too much about the character before I saw the film, but I loved his design and his story. I always thought he was cool. And just as Nick mentioned, he is brilliantly brought to life in this tale, and he is this relatable person that the moral of this story that is mentioned multiple times throughout the film is that anybody could be behind the mask. And he embodies that because of him being thrust into it to a level that we've never really seen before. It's him dealing with it and not immediately getting it like the other Parkers do. You get this feeling of like experiencing it with him that you as an audience member could be behind the mask. It's very well done.
It's more interesting for me now after playing like the PS4 Spider-Man game, even though I didn't finish it. I got halfway through it, and the story that Miles is in is a lot different than what it is in this one. And
Oh yeah.
but they still tie in little nits and things, and it's very interesting to see how his character works throughout different things.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Peter B. Parker, who is voiced by Jake Johnson. He is Miles' reluctant mentor, a disheveled, jaded, and brown haired 38-year-old counterpart of the hero from another dimension. He is intended to be an amalgamation of all pop culture Spider Man adaptations and interpretations. Listen to the comment from the directors. This was hilarious. Lord and Miller envisioned him to be like the Karate Kid's Mr. Miyagi if Mr. Miyagi doesn't know anything, which they thought was a really neat color to put onto Peter that we had never seen before. um, and I would like to start off just by saying he is so funny in this film. He is my favorite character. The reluctance and that like early relationship bit with Miles is done so well, but this reluctance it doesn't cheapen the relationship that develops between him and Miles. That heartfelt and close bond that you see throughout the film, like with him standing up for Miles to other Spider people, and like being a mentor and a father figure to him is just man. I love Peter B. Parker. He better be in the
Oh
sequel.
yeah. I really liked his character, and it was interesting because with that character, they dealt with a lot of more mature subject matter with the things he's gone through, and it was
Depression. Mm-hmm.
interesting being afraid to have kids, which ended in divorce and different things. And I'm like, this is an interesting topic to deal with in a movie like this. It's not like there, but it's in the background, and it gets you to think this character has more than just trying to be Miles' mentor. And he doesn't even want to in the first place. He's
Mm-hmm.
just forced to be. And
Absolutely.
he does it well. And it makes his end of his character arc at the end of the movie even more satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really love the oh boy, it just slid right out of my mind. The part with him uh but it's gone. Yep. If I remember it, I'll mention it later. It's gone. So let's talk about Gwen Stacy, who's portrayed by Haley Steinfeld. A dimension displaced counterpart of Gwen Stacy with spider like abilities, who takes up the alias of Wanda, mistaken as Gwanda, while at Miles' school. on-screen comic books explain her origin story, where she is referred to as Spider Gwen. Why don't you start us off with Gwen Stacy?
She's a fun character. She's lighthearted, but at the same time not. Because again, all of these characters have that little dark area because it's a Spider-Man origin, and all of them got that dark spot. And she just does it while playing it off, but you also see her growth as her friend was killed, and she is still dealing with that loss, and she grows out of it with becoming closer with Miles.
Mm-hmm. I remember what I was gonna say. Um, when Miles does something great and Peter B. Parker is like, "Wow, great job, kid," and then he like, "Do I want children?" I love that. That was such a character moment. But getting back to the topic at hand, as I alluded to in our Spider-Man No Way Home review, make sure you check that out on YouTube whenever you get your podcast at Great Movie Red Podcast. Um, she is my favorite Spider-Man love interest.
Yeah.
Just edging out Michelle from the MCU. Um, she is my favorite. She's spunky, she's funny, and the chemistry with Miles is really strong. And that is what makes it even more impressive. Is it is hard to get that chemistry in a voiceover role. That's not easy to do. But she and Shamik Moore, they pull that off very, very well. It's impressive, really. It's well done. So let's now talk about Peter Parker, the 26-year-old blonde haired, blue eyed version native to Miles' dimension. He is portrayed by Chris Pine, and this version of Parker was intended to be as competent a Spider Man as possible, and combines elements from previous Spider Man portrayals, but with slight differences to indicate that he is from a different universe than the others. He was a graduate student and married to Mary Jane Watson. So I'm going to start off by saying that they absolutely nailed this super competent version of Spider-Man. He's pitch perfect Spider-Man performance, and his voiceover work. I've never really heard Chris Pine do any other voices that I can think of. Generally, he's just the actor on screen as Captain Kirk or Steve Trevor, but no, he was great giving this voice performance as Peter Parker. Uh,
I I enjoyed him. He has this dynamic with Miles that's interesting, and he wants to help guide him, and he has this relationship that is great. And in the beginning, when you see him talking about his backstory, and you see him do the walk down the road like Tobey Maguire's, was funny.
yes, yes. Um, so let's talk about Aaron Davis, also known as the Prowler. He is voiced by Mahershala Ali. Um, so Aaron Davis is a person who moonlights as a masked enforcer for Wilson Fisk, that being the Prowler. And like I said, light spoilers here. So we're going to hit you with a bit of a spoiler. Aaron is, of course, Miles Morales' uncle.
I don't think that's the spoiler. I think him being the Prowler's the spoiler.
Um, if people know who Aaron Davis is, they know he's the Prowler.
I didn't know who he was till this movie.
But did you know Aaron Davis?
No.
Yeah, that's what
This
I
is the
mean.
first time I knew this character.
That's what I mean. If people know Aaron Davis, they know he's the Prowler. As soon as the name
Oh.
is said, if they know Aaron Davis, they know that's the Prowler. So just on a side note, you didn't know that Aaron Davis was in Homecoming?
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah, that's
But I
who
didn't
Troy
know
Burns
who
was
he
playing.
was.
Yeah, he's the Prowler. He even references
Everyone was like,
Miles in the
ooh,
movie.
and I was like, I don't know who this guy is.
He even references Miles in Homecoming. He says, "I have a nephew." Anyway.
I really like the Prowler's design.
Oh, Prowler's cool. Um, so because Prowler is, of course, an enforcer for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, this brings him into opposition with his nephew, Miles. Um, would you like to start off our talk about Aaron Davis?
Man, Prowler. I, I, Prowler is like one of my favorite villain designs for a character. It's so cool.
Mm.
I like his design over a lot of other Spider-Man characters. That's just how I am. Got the purple. He's got the big claws. He's got a cape. Super sneaky. Cool. Um, he's scary. Aaron Davis though, he's a great uncle, man. That's a cool guy. And telling him Miles to go, hey, funniest thing ever.
Hey.
It was more funny when you see them like doing it on the couch and they're like making fun of each other and doing it in stupid voices. I was like, this is hilarious. But it is like gut wrenching when Miles realizes that he is the Prowler. Because you're like, man, because that was like his brother more than an uncle.
Yeah. And they could have just included him and not dealt with the fallout of what that means. They could have had Aaron Davis as just a little teaser for something in the future, like what they did in Homecoming. But using it was an inspired choice that raises the stakes and draws Miles into this world of heroes and villains effortlessly.
Oh,
And just like as you alluded to, if you are unfamiliar with the comics, that twist is going to hit you pretty hard.
because I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you know?
Um, so that is a pretty spoilerific take, but believe us, that's not the heavy spoilers yet. So let's talk about Jefferson Davis, who is voiced by Brian Tyree Henry. He is Miles' father, a police officer, who disapproves of Spider-Man's vigilante actions. At the age of 35, Henry said that he was too young to portray the father of a teenager, but agreed to the role after learning that Miles Morales was the only black Latino Spider-Man. And you know what? It's a decent performance.
Okay.
But what saves it, and it didn't necessarily need saving, but what elevates it, I guess, is the writing of the character. The voice work, Brian Tyree Henry does nothing wrong. He doesn't do anything to set himself apart. Other people could have done the role just as well. But the writing for Jefferson Davis sells his role and his importance in the film. This is the most important a Spider-Man family member has ever been in a Spider-Man story. I think my voice is just slowly dying here. 1 second.
You should get a new voice. You need a voice box, Peter? Like, come on.
Just trade it in.
Get you a new suit.
But the familial and the unknowing professional tension between him and his son, it works so well and really powerful stuff. Multiple scenes of just wow with Jefferson Davis.
You know what my mom said when I was watching this? She's like, is that The Rock that's voicing him? And I went, what?
No, it's Fastos from Eternals and also from Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh.
Yeah, that guy. I have no idea his name, but that guy.
The janitor.
Yeah, anything you want to say?
Great dad. He deserves an award.
Award for good dads.
Exactly. That part where he's like, say I love you, Dad.
I want to hear it.
10 out of 10.
All right, so let's talk about May Parker, who is voiced by Lily Tomlin. It's Peter's aunt who is dead in Peter B. Parker's universe and provides refuge for the other Spider people in Miles' universe. Would you like to open the discussion about May?
Coolest Aunt May. She's got a shed full of spider tech. Like, come on. Can't say that I'm not sick.
No,
Like,
that's true.
Like, Marvel Cinematic Universe May is, like, second coolest. But this one, top of the line cool. She looks like the type of aunt where if you're getting bullied at school, she'd walk in and then just beat the punk up and then walk out. You know?
Explains nothing, leaves.
Exactly.
Yeah, this was a clever take on May. And while I'll agree that she's the coolest, she's still not my favorite May, but I will agree that she's the coolest.
She's the coolest. She's not my favorite either, but she's the coolest.
Yeah, she was not a damsel in distress at all. Her bullying Tombstone, just with a bat, just whacks him in the balls and kicks him out of the house. Like, that was just bullied Tombstone. Tombstone, the poor guy, just on a side note, because we're not going to dive into Tombstone's character, he's barely there. But he gets punked a lot and gets to do practically nothing. He has one line and gets bullied pretty much the whole film. Um, and then, yeah, not my favorite May, but a good May. All right, it's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Let's dive in.
Spider Noir and Penny Park and Peter Porker.
Why you interrupting me? It's the time you've been waiting for. It's time to talk about the Spider People.
Oh, I
You
thought you'd
dink.
say we're going into major spoiler territory.
We haven't even done the effects and cinematography or writing and story.
forgot.
Let's start with Peter Porker, who's voiced by John Mulaney, an alternate talking animal version of Spider-Man from an anthropomorphic universe, who was once a spider bitten by a radioactive pig. You can't make this crap up. I'll start by saying there is no one else in this generation of actors who could have done a better job as Spider-Ham than John Mulaney did. It fits so well that if you look at the character, I can't hear any voice from anyone currently alive as Spider-Ham. I can't. In my honest opinion, the only person who would have been a better choice is Robin Williams. And Robin Williams, of course, is dead. Like, it was great casting. And he's so funny and it fits the character so well. And even gets to have some poignant moments as well. It was awesome.
I like his big hammer. And he's a funny character. He's that comedic relief. But again, it's a Spider-Man. Spider-Ham.
A spider pig.
Spider Origins has that dark area, and even he talks about it. And it's like, you're not expecting this from the dude that's carrying a hammer and hitting Scorpion over the head. Like, and dropping anvils like it's nothing. Like, he's Steve from Minecraft on steroids.
Yeah, like I was just about to say, like a Smash Bros. Character.
Yeah. He's fun. But, again, the movie does well at when it needs to bring it down. It can bring it down even with Peter Porker.
Yeah, the emotional core is very strong in this film.
It's like, what's that little YouTube video where it's like Batman and Spider-Man?
Oh, Barman and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's who should be in the next movie.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man in it. Oh,
that would be so funny. So let's talk about Penny Parker, who is voiced by Kimiko Glenn, a young Japanese-American girl from an alternative anime-like universe who co-pilots a biomechanical suit with a radioactive spider that she shares a telepathic link with. Again, you can't make this crap up. The filmmakers initially considered using Silk as their Asian-American Spider-Man, but eventually settled on Penny because of her more distinctive power set compared to the other Spider people. Penny's design went through a few iterations, as her initial design was particularly iffy, whatever that means. Production designer Justin Thompson considered Lorna Miller's desire to use an anime design and came up with the idea to portray her in an art style similar to that of Sailor Moon. So why don't you start off our Penny Parker talk?
She was cool. I don't like how she was so close with a spider, because I don't like spiders. But for some reason, my favorite superhero was Spider-Man. But it was cool. You seeing that giant robot just beating the crap out of things? Sick. Every time they do the pan view on her inside, she's always eating food. I'm like, she's living a life. She just gets to sit there, eat food, and just hit buttons. Ooh, it's like the guy in the chair, but actually gets to do something. Instead of just being the guy in the chair.
While she was very unique, especially compared to the other spider people with the spitter robot, and the cool art style, like even beside the others, she stands out as different. Her skills are unique. She didn't really do it for me, if I'm being honest. I don't have any major problems with her. It was just she was the least interesting to me. So my least favorite character in the movie, which is saying something because she's not bad. This movie just has a cast of pretty good characters. So let's talk about Spider-Man Noir, who is voiced
Nicholas
by
in a cage.
Nicolas Cage. A dark and monochromatic alternate version of Peter Parker from a 1930s universe. Cage based his character on the films of Humphrey Bogart, Casablanca, and the likes, and the voices of actors from that era, such as James Cagney, more on him in a couple weeks, we're actually reviewing a Cagney film soon, and Edward G. Robinson. And let me just say that Nicolas Cage was such a treat in this film. Uh,
Rubik's Cube.
yeah, he's a really cool Parker to begin with, like Spider-Man Noir, and then Cage's voice and the how he does surprise attack. It's
I
sometimes I
lit a
let a match
match.
burn down to my fingers just so I can feel something. Like it's so good. Go ahead.
Yeah, my favorite quote is the match one. I'm like, that is relatable. Joking, joking. Not. But it's
Oh
pretty
no,
good.
it is.
He beating up Nazis.
Yeah,
Uh,
a lot.
a lot of Nazis, and he's in America. So how are they getting there? Who knows?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Price check. So let's talk about Dr. Olivia Octavius, who is voiced by Catherine Hahn of Agatha Harkness fame for Marvel fans, the head scientist and CEO of Alchemax, and a scientific advisor to Wilson Fisk. Would you like to start for Miss Octavius?
I like how they hinted her at the beginning of the movie when Miles goes to his new school because it's not obvious. But when you listen to it when he walks in, they mention Octavius, and I'm like,
She's on the screen too. They're
oh,
watching a
yeah.
video about her.
And then when they go to the place, like, oh yeah, we watched her like in class and all that, about that. And you might not pick up on it immediately because
I,
it's just
I,
those
I didn't
photos.
until this viewing. My third viewing
Yeah.
was the first time I picked up on
I think I noticed it the first time, but that's however long ago. I can't remember if I did or not. I'm just gonna make myself seem smart.
it.
But she was an intimidating Doc Ock.
Yeah.
She played it well, and the way the tentacles are in this one, like it's not like how they are in live action because you can't have tentacles move that stinking fast without it looking a little strange. But they have such organic ability with them instead of mechanical, and I think it was interesting.
Yeah, instead of metal, it's plastics, um, and this was a cool take on Doc Ock, and Han delivers a solid performance as the character. The one thing is, every time I see the film, I am consistently surprised by how much of the film she's in. It's like I remember her in that one sequence from the trailers, and it's like, oh, she's in this scene too. Oh, she's in this scene too. I keep forgetting how much she's actually in the movie. um, but yeah, uh, not my favorite Doc Ock, obviously, but a decent one. And finally, let's talk about the man himself, Kingpin, voiced by Liev Schreiber, a crime lord and the benefactor of Alchemax and Miles Dimension. Allow me to start with the words peak character design. No joke, I love his design in this film so much.
Is it even comic accurate?
No, I think he's even more exaggerated than in the comics. This is why, he looks so over the top that it could have been overly silly, but because it is played as serious and no one acknowledges how ridiculously big he is, it works for me. It really does. And the performance and the writing, top notch. His motives, his dialogue, Schreiber's vocals. He walks on screen just clicking his pen. He's like, dun 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 dun. Here comes the Spider-Man. Like it's
It breaks his pen.
well, that's later, but cinematic. Let's be real here. Cinematic Spider-Man villains have set the bar astronomically high. Molina's Doc Ock, Dafoe's Green Goblin, Keaton's Vulture, Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. Liev Schreiber's Kingpin has earned his slot on that shelf of excellence as far as cinematic Spidey villains go. I think this is my favorite version of Kingpin. And sure, it's easy to laugh at the design. I laugh at it too. It's hilarious. But I love it. It works so well for me. I love it.
Honestly, this Kingpin is very, very threatening.
Oh, he
That
feels like such a
when
threat.
Miles fights him at the end, I'm like, I feel like he's got plot armor right now. This doesn't feel right.
Oh, take it away. You got anything to
But
add about
man,
Kingpin?
he chunky boy. Uh,
He's slick.
the one part that's comedic to me is when they're at Octavius's place and Miles is watching from the distance, and you see Kingpin come out the car. I'm like, he's half the size of the car.
hmm
How did he get in and get out?
And they play it so serious and straight. I love it.
They don't question it or nothing. They're just like, all right.
Yeah, and like he's the only character like that. And it's not even just that he's a big dude by normal standards. He is freakish. He looks like he's from a different universe, like Porker's universe. And no one questions it, and that's why it works so well for me. I love it. Peak character
He
design.
could almost be an Avengers level threat. I feel like he's got this strength to him that's just like, boy.
And that's actually the thing that a lot of people don't understand about Kingpin is he's not fat. He's huge, but his muscle, it's all muscle. He has like a 0.2% body fat. He's that big of muscle. And think about how much muscle that means. Like this guy is a unit.
He's a freaking tank.
But yeah, Kingpin, man, I
Him
love
versus
that.
Juggernaut.
There,
That's what I want.
there would be something. Probably
Like
wouldn't be a
the
long
one in
something, but
Hawkeye wouldn't be much, but the one from Spider Verse, that
yeah,
Kingpin versus Juggernaut, I want to see that.
that would be something. But yeah, I love that design so much. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and that's why I love it.
Also, you know what I like to point out is at the end fight when Miles is fighting him in the first part on that building, and then Miles goes across the entire thing into that train, and Kingpin shows up behind him and decks him, and I'm like, this guy is either freakishly fast,
He is
or
freakishly fat, but
or they just teleported him there,
no,
and I'm like,
it makes sense if you consider it this way. He grabbed onto the same train Miles did because it was a whole train. Miles grabs onto the front, he grabs onto the rear. Miles is standing there, he just runs up and kaboof. Yeah. So
and
let's.
Reed Richards is his son in this one.
It wasn't Reed Richards.
It's oh shoot, wrong one.
In one of the alternate dimensions, Matt Murdock is his son.
That's what it was.
Yeah, one of the alternate dimensions.
For some reason, my brain, because of Doctor
Fantastic
Strange and
Four.
everything, with all these rumors of Reed Richards, and then just hearing Richards, and then just thinking that there's that Matt Murdock cameo in it, I'm thinking, Daredevil's name is Reed Richards or something like that.
Yeah,
just
no.
like, I'm losing my mind here.
He's losing his mind. So let's talk about the effects and cinematography. And the effects in this film, the visuals, the animation is straight up gorgeous. The comic style with the pointillism art. This, in my honest opinion, the best part of this film is the visuals. It is sleek, it is stylized, and it's absolutely wonderful.
It's a great design, and I always remember reading up on a thing where Miles is so a lot of it was all with frame rate and all that in the film, and Miles had 15 frames per second, while all the other characters had 30.
So he seems
And
out of
Miles
step.
didn't. He exactly. He didn't have 30 till after you see him jump off that building as Spider-Man the first time.
That's cool. That's really
I
cool.
that's one thing I always remember reading. There's a lot more little secrets with the animation designs. Like each picture has like 10 layers between it to make like one wall just to add in that design, and like every time they focus on a character, everything else around like goes into like that triple effect.
Yeah, because
And
that's how
everything.
comics are drawn.
Yeah.
That I did notice.
There's a lot of little hidden secrets that if you like read up on it, it's very interesting little things they've shoved in there.
Absolutely. And the cinematography, while not as impressive as the effects, the visuals, it was still good cinematography. Most of the shot choices were great. I do have one complaint, and it's that it can be a little hard to track what's happening during the Green Goblin versus Parker fight near the beginning and the final battle at the end. But just for established, both of them looked great. It's just a little hard to track what's happening sometimes in those
Yeah.
scenes.
Sometimes your brain's like, oh, colors.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, great designs, colors, sounds, all that. It was great.
So let's talk about the writing and score. The writing is superb in this film. It has so much that it has to explain because it's a multiversal story, and it nails it without feeling expositional. And it also has a lot of heart, and it's also very funny. And like the as far as the heart goes, primary which is the relationship between Jefferson Davis and Miles Morales, which we mentioned earlier. The writing for that father son dynamic is so good.
Oh yeah. The one thing I really like is how, as you mentioned, it's not like this exposition of just information and all this different stuff. Because you're talking about the multiverse here, and a lot of them, I think it was better that they kind of just went, it's just a Spider-Man thing, and didn't really focus too much on it. Because I'm like, it could have turned to a real doozy if they tried to be like, so this is exactly what's happening, and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, okay, my brain's gonna explode if they did that, you know? But they did. They didn't try tackling it because they knew that it doesn't need to be for this movie.
Yeah.
You know, that's future events.
Yeah, you still feel like you understand what's going on without it being over explained. It works well.
Exactly.
The score. Now I have a mixed opinion on the score.
Yeah.
The score is the only technical aspect of the film that, in my opinion, isn't top notch. There's nothing wrong with the score, but it's not anything too special except for one specific score piece, which is Prowler's theme with the. I love that.
How it's just
Prowler's
like it's calm, Prowler.
yeah, Prowler's theme is great. Now, here's where this complicated relationship comes in. As I say that about the score, the use of soundtrack, though, was very effective and livened
Oh
up
yeah.
a lot of scenes that would have seemed dull, like the opening scene. That musical montage works very well.
It's hilarious in the opening when Miles is singing and like
Mhm.
he's not getting the words right at all, and I'm like, this is how everyone sings like that one favorite song that they forget like half the words to, and they're just like making them up as they go because they're like, this sounds right.
You want to add?
Uh, the soundtrack, it was pretty good. You're not much of a rap guy for sound like music too much and all that. I listen to a little bit. I
I
dabble.
listen to more than you.
Uh, really? All
Yeah,
right, Hamilton.
Hamilton's like all rap. Now, mainstream rap, I don't listen to much
Yeah,
of.
and a lot of the music that is like present, that
Yeah,
isn't just background, is like mainstream rap.
yeah.
So I know a bit more about stuff and all that, and it's interesting to listen to. You know, some of them are some good beats for it and all that. I enjoyed it. And again, you know, Prowler's theme, even just the Spider-Man's, because it's not like the normal Spider-Man theme. They twist it up a little bit, change
Mm.
it, and it you don't notice it as much as like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man thing. Second you hear that, you instantly know what it is. Um, but it still had those good soundtracks and those good sound designs in the background. And when they're like attacking people and all that, mixed with cinematography, you know, you get the pow and the comic style, and they hit
Mm.
people, and how like
Wow.
each punch and all that, you can actually hear the sounds too and all that, like more intensely than normal.
Yeah, because it dives into that comic book style. All right, it is time. Warning, warning. Heavy spoilers ahead. Chunk 1. New York
Spoiler.
City New York City teenager Miles Morales struggles to live up to the expectations of his father, police officer Jefferson Davis, who sees Spider-Man as a menace. Miles adjusts to prep school and visits his uncle Aaron, who takes him to an abandoned subway station to paint graffiti. Miles is bitten by a radioactive spider and gains spider-like abilities similar to Spider-Man. Now that sums up a chunk of the movie pretty well, about 20 minutes of it. But we can't move on without talking about the hilarity that is the scene where Miles is figuring out his powers.
Yep.
With Gwen, and honestly, probably the funniest joke in the film, in my opinion, over all of them, is when the security guard confronts him, and he goes, um, "Morales, I knew you snuck out of here last night. Play dumb. Who's Morales? Not that dumb." I love that. That is so funny.
Funny. It's good. It pulls you in. When Miles, you get the understanding that he's in this new school and he doesn't want to be. So it's funny watching him be the super smart kid trying to get kicked out when he gets complete zero.
Yeah.
And the teacher's like, what's the probability of like a blind person, just marking on this test or something they've never seen before? 50% out of 100. Then why is it zero?
Unless you knew all the answers and chose it wrong.
Yeah. And it's interesting to watch it happen. And there's these things that play well in it and all that. And I like it.
All right. Chunk number 2. Returning to the station, Miles discovers a super collider built by Kingpin, who hopes to access parallel universes to bring back his late wife and son, whose deaths he blames on Spider-Man. Miles watches as Spider-Man attempts to disable the collider while fighting Kingpin's enforcers, Green Goblin and the Prowler. Spider-Man saves Miles, but Green Goblin shuts Spider-Man into the collider, causing an explosion that severely wounds Spider-Man. Spider-Man gives Miles a USB flash drive designed to disable the collider, warning that the machine could destroy the city if reactivated. After watching in horror as Kingpin murders Spider-Man, Miles flees with Prowler in pursuit, eventually getting away.
Man, the scene that I won't shut up about.
I think it is jarring and shocking that Peter Parker is killed. So the first time you watch it, it's shocking that he dies so early in the film. The second and third time you watch it, or on repeated viewings, it surprises me how long it takes for him to die, knowing that he dies at the beginning. At the 30-minute mark is when he dies. And this isn't an exceptionally long film, it's just under 2 hours. So it's a quarter of the film before the Spider-Man who dies at the beginning dies.
Yeah. And
And
just that I wouldn't shut up about
yeah.
more.
And this is one of the most brutal deaths, despite nothing being shown, just from how it happens, is Kingpin just slams him and presumably breaks every single vital bone in his body.
This is why I believe the ending Miles Morales had plot armor, because Kingpin does the exact same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And he gets up and I'm like, something's wrong. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, you've already established that don't work, or you don't live from that. But man, that it is so abrupt too, because like Parker has this like moment of it's not gonna work, and Kingpin doesn't even say anything. He just slams him, and one two-fisted blow, and he's dead. It is such a shock. Um,
They don't usually kill off the main hero. It's not the main hero in this film, but he would have been
well, here's the
if it
thing:
did.
based on the trailers, you assume that this is the one teaching Miles in the trailers. Like it is brilliantly done that it subverts your expectations really quickly into the film. Um, Chunk number 3. As the city mourns Spider-Man's death, Miles tries to honor his legacy and become the new Spider-Man. Stan Lee cameo, one of his final ones while he was alive, is very nice. While trying out his newfound abilities, he inadvertently damages the drive, USB drive. At
The
Spider-Man's
Goober.
grave, the goober. At Spider-Man's grave, Miles meets Peter B. Parker, an older and worn down version of Spider-Man from another dimension. Upon meeting him, Miles discovers his ability to emit bioelectric bursts called Venom Blasts. Peter reluctantly agrees to train Miles in exchange for help stealing data to create a new USB drive. They infiltrate Kingpin's research facility, and Miles discovers he has the power to turn invisible. They are confronted by mad scientist Olivia Octavius, who discovers that Peter will die from cellular decay if he remains in their dimension. We're going to cut that one off mid-scene to talk about that chunk. Because the slapstick in this scene where Miles is trying to run away with Peter B. Parker attached by webbing while unconscious The slapstick in that scene is so good.
They really just man was getting brutally bullied throughout the entire time, and he's not even awake for it. And when he does wake up, out
Immediately.
immediately.
And like the police officer, like there's a guy dressed as Spider-Man running away with a homeless corpse. It's so funny, and just
Um,
how it all plays out with their chemistry, the reluctance on Peter B. Parker, and then like the revealing of what he's like when he goes into Alchemix alone, and then Miles comes after him, and I can't let Spider-Man die because Miles just witnessed one die, and he says, "Most of the people I meet in the workplace are just trying to kill me. You are a nice change of pace."
yeah. I
I
also
like that.
like when Miles is at Spider-Man's funeral, and he's like, "They're talking to me," when they're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
to rise up and all that, and the guy's like, "I
Oh,
don't. I think that's metaphoric."
yeah. Not you specifically. I think it's more like a metaphor. It's just a random guy too. Overheard him. It's great. Um. So let's get into chunk number 4. This is going to cover a large chunk of the film, so there'll be a decent dissection coming. Chased through the laboratory and surrounding forest by Octavius, Miles and Peter are rescued by Gwen Stacy, a Spider Woman from another dimension. They then visit Peter's aunt, May Parker, who is sheltering more spider people from other dimensions, Spider Man Noir, Penny Parker, and Spider Ham, who are also deteriorating. Miles offers to disable the collider so the others can return home, but after questioning and testing him, surprise attack, they tell him that he lacks experience. Distraught, Miles retreats to Aaron's home, where he discovers Aaron is the Prowler. Miles returns to May's house, where Penny has completed the new drive, but he is followed by Kingpin, Prowler, Octavius, Scorpion, and Tombstone. Cue May bullying Tombstone. Oh, I forgot to mention that during the Alchemix sequence in the last chunk, cue Octavius bullying Tombstone. um, in the ensuing brawl, Miles reveals his identity to Aaron just as Aaron corners him. Unwilling to kill his own nephew, Prowler spares Miles, only to be fatally shot by the Kingpin. Miles flees with Aaron, who tells him to keep going before dying. Jefferson Davis arrives on the scene and Miles escape, leading Jefferson to mistake Miles for Aaron's murderer, not knowing it's Miles, Spider-Man, for Aaron's murderer. This chunk. Oh boy, this chunk. So let's break it down
It's
slow.
intense.
Let's just break it down slow. The Peter Parker Miles Morales escape from Alchemix Lab, help from Gwen Stacy, beautiful scene. You get to see them working together. It's so much fun. I really do like it. And then meeting the Spider People, iconic scene, probably the most iconic scene from the film. Uh, Sup fellas and all that. It's iconic. Um, and then the Aaron Davis reveal, then the house brawl, which is epic, and then of course Aaron Davis is killed by Kingpin.
That scene when Miles finds out and Prowler like comes around the corner and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, did he just see him? And he's invisible and they're like very close to each other, like super duper. And you're like,
Mm-hmm. That's right before he takes off the
yeah.
mask, right? Is he's there and then he gets the call and then he takes off the mask and Miles is like, oh, oh no.
Oh no, it was that the Prowler came in, takes off his mask because he was talking to him, and then Miles made a sound, which made him throw the mask back on and turn the
Oh, that was
corner.
it. Gotcha. Um,
That's what it was.
that was it. It is. Whew.
Yeah.
uh,
There was and stealing a bagel.
yep,
That
yep.
part where they're like they go to the bagel.
Selecting bagel. They've got a
And then
bagel. Oh, also the hilarity of Miles can't log into Octavius's account, like can't find what he's looking for on her computer. So he grabs the monitor in the computer and he's running. Peter joins with the hallway. They're running like, well, the good news is we don't need the monitor. Just tosses it away. And just the animation of it, just we don't need the monitor. I love that. It was so funny. And then of course Aaron Davis's death is really
and
powerful
that
scene.
fight there was pretty good, like when they're in May's house, because it's such
Mhm.
a close cordonal that it gets creative where everyone's jumping around and everything. It's very chaotic, but at the same time organized.
It reminded me of X-Men: The Last Stand at the Jean Grey house. That
Yeah.
fight.
Was that
Even
really a fight though?
yeah,
In the Jean Grey house, she just kind of held them all there.
no, I don't mean Jean Grey herself. I mean Wolverine fighting Juggernaut, Storm fighting the
Oh, right,
fast
right,
chick.
right, right. I
Yeah,
forgot about that. It's been a long time.
I actually quite liked that scene. I really like Juggernaut. I just think it's so funny that Magneto says to Juggernaut, "Nobody gets inside." Juggernaut's first action after beating up Wolverine, throw him into the house. Like, good job, Juggernaut. You're doing well.
You got this.
Um, our next chunk. The heroes regroup at Miles' dorm room. Peter restrains Miles to ensure his safety and leaves with the others, choosing to sacrifice himself by staying behind and deactivating the collider. Jefferson arrives outside Miles' door and, assuming Miles does not want to speak to him, apologizes through the door for his mistakes and inspires Miles to keep going. Miles then manages to control his powers, escape his restraints, and create his own Spider Man gear with May's help. He joins the heroes in defeating Kingpin's enforcers and using the new drive to send them home one at a time. With Miles the last one standing, the last villain standing, Kingpin fights Miles, attracting the attention of Jefferson, who realizes that Miles is on the side of good. Jefferson encourages Miles, who manages to subdue the Kingpin with a Venom Blast and throwing him at the kill switch, destroying the Collider. That's a lot of boy to throw around right there.
Yeah, boy, oh boy.
um, so let's start with the dorm room scene. So powerful because that's where that poignant thing we were talking about with Spider Ham comes in, where he has the line, "Miles, the hardest part of this job is you can't always save everybody." And then with Peter B. Parker, and Miles trying to convince he can do it, and he's like webs him and saying from the ceiling, and then Venom blast me right now, or turn invisible to get past me. And Miles can't do it, so he webs him up. I'm sorry, Miles. And even just a little bit of the other Spider people outside the window listening and their reactions, like it's a good scene. But I think the scene that made my heart hurt the most was Jefferson talking to Miles through the door. Because Jefferson just honestly think Miles hates him, and that's why he's not answering, not realizing that Miles can't talk or open the door because he's webbed to a chair.
He's in a hostage situation.
Yeah, and the police on the other side apologizing. But man, that scene is so well done.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
I also like the part when they're like pretending to be one of the waiters, and then Peter B. Parker runs into Mary, and she's just like done, and he's just like, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for the bread," because it can't be obvious.
Yeah,
And she's just like uncomfortable the whole time.
yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
funny.
And then the final fight, really, really cool.
Right.
Spanning the Super Collider area, all sorts of villains. It's crazy. It's very hard to tell who lives and who dies in this scene. We know for a fact that two of the villains survive, but we don't know about any of the others, including Olivia Octavius and Scorpion. We have no idea.
Who knows?
The
And
sequel
also
might tell us,
this.
or it might not.
Who knows? We'll never know. Maybe. Who knows? I'm just gonna keep saying who knows. I like the scene as well when Miles like gets out and he goes to Aunt May and he gets the suit and when he jumps off the building. That scene of that is what everyone always remembers from that movie because just the way it was designed and everything. It's a beautiful scene.
I still think meeting the Spider People is the most iconic, but you might have an
Well, I'm
argument
not
there.
saying meeting the people's like it is iconic, but it's just like that scene was just really well designed and just looked good.
Um, and then the send off for each of the Spider People I really like too. They got their like final little bits in there.
Gives him a
Uh,
hammer.
Gives the hammer. I love Spider Noir with the Rubik's Cube. I'm taking this thing with me. I don't understand it, but I will. Because he's in a black and white universe with a colored Rubik's Cube. and then the other emotional part that hit me pretty hard is with Peter B. Parker and Miles, the last one left. Miles is like, or Peter B. Parker's like, I'll hold off Kingpin. You shut down the Collider. And Miles like, no, you got to go home, man. And then they're arguing, and then Peter B. Parker shouts out, I can't let Spider-Man die. What Miles said to him earlier, and it's like, oh man, that is good writing. And then not bad, kid, as he goes back to his
What
dimension.
a meme. Not bad.
um, so our final chunk. Kingpin and Tombstone are arrested. We don't see anyone else being arrested, so we don't know who else is alive. But apparently Tombstone gets bullied the whole film, gets to survive it, so who knows. And Jefferson recognizes the new Spider-Man as a hero while receiving evidence of Kingpin's murder of Spider-Man and Aaron. Miles embraces the responsibilities of his new life while the heroes return to their lives in their own dimensions. Later, Gwen finds a way to contact Miles from her own dimension, setting up the sequel.
And then the post-credit scene.
We'll talk about it after.
Oh, come on.
You are like the least patient person today. Like, holy cow, I want to talk about the death of the light spoilers, but I want to just jump to the post-credit scene. Like, my goodness.
Well, I don't know. Um, Patience is a gift.
No, it ain't.
I like the part when they're on the phone before Miles comes down as Spider-Man
Mm,
because it's like tying in back to the dorm room scene,
yeah.
and it still holds that emotion. And Miles is finally accepting of his dad and like
Yeah.
wants to try being father son. And then he puts some mask on and he comes down and he just instantly hugs him and his
He's
dad's
so
so confused.
confused.
He's like, "It's why is Spider-Man hugging me,
Yeah.
anyways?" And then he does the deep voice. He's like, "Don't worry, officer."
Yeah, thank you, officer. I'm looking forward to working with you. Yeah, yeah. Um, in our post-credit scene, in yet another dimension, Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, travels to the universe of the 1967 Spider-Man animated series and argues with its Spider-Man as to who pointed first in the famous scene, the famous meme. And of course, the most exciting part of that all is the actor who I absolutely love, Oscar Isaac, is the voice of Spider-Man 2099 and is confirmed to be in the sequel as a major
Oscar
player.
Isaac. Oh my goodness, he's playing both the comic book characters that I really love, but know like almost nothing about.
Moon Knight and Spider-Man 2099.
Those two are like some of my favorite comic. I know nothing about them.
um, and that is our heavy spoilers section. So let's wrap this puppy up with our favorite and least favorite scene. You want to start? Favorite scene?
No, you start.
Well, my favorite scene has to be the final battle, but specifically the farewells between the Spider People, especially what I was talking about with Peter E. Parker and Miles Morales. I can't let Spider. Oh, I love it. That was so well done.
My favorite scene would probably be. I think it's the whole sequence of them running out of the place and then going to the trees swinging because like the
Oh, at Malcolm
doctors all
X.
switch in and then they're like he's got a bangle and then he's running away and he's still trying to figure it out and he's just like I don't know what I'm doing and then Spider-Gwen just is like you're both dumb.
And then my least favorite scene, I have an interesting take on this one. So my least favorite scene has to be when they infiltrate Kingpin's soiree to get to the Collider. And why it's my least favorite scene is it was a missed opportunity. That scene could have been hysterical. It was a missed opportunity, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with the scene. I just feel like it could have been better. And that's how hard it was for me to pick a least favorite scene, is I had to nitpick what could have been instead of
Oh
what was.
yeah. I it's hard to pick a least favorite scene. You know how I am with movies. Like I'm terrible at picking a least favorite. Um, I I think my least favorite is just Peter Parker dying because I didn't want him to die. So we'll put it as that.
Fair enough. Let's hear our final overall rating. You can go first, my dude.
I give it an 80.
Oh yeah, a little harder than I thought you would be. Every time I think that I'm the harsh one, he surprises me.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I actually have a higher rating, quite surprisingly. I give it an 84%. Now, to be clear, I would rather watch Free Guy, which I gave an 83. But like I said, when I give my overall rating, it's not just my preference, it's also the technical standpoint, how good the movie is, and especially technically, the visuals and everything. It is an incredible experience.
We should watch a garbage movie and see how we review it.
I'm sure we'll stumble across some because we're going to dive into movies we haven't seen pretty soon. More on that in a little bit. Um, But as for what is coming up next, we are going to take a look at Disney's latest animated film, Encanto. Only like 4 months too late, but hey, we don't talk about Bruno, but we're going to talk about Encanto.
I still haven't seen those movies, so.
It's one movie.
I didn't say movies, I said I haven't
You
seen those
said
movies.
those movies.
Oh, shoot.
Anyway, for the Great Movie Ride podcast, I've been Gaston,
I've been Jerryofdom.
and we'll see you in the movies. Goodbye, everybody.
Be quiet at the movies. See ya.